Welcome to Her Remarkable History. Remember, to support our channel, please subscribe. Murder at Henry VIII's court. The shocking execution of Agnes Hungerford. Inside the court of Henry VIII, there were many different factions and groups who tried to compete for supremacy and favour in the eyes of one of history's most brutal kings. To remain in Henry VIII's good books could mean a number of things: financial gain, territorial gain, and also the fact you were likely to not meet a bloody end being executed. Henry, after all, executed 70,000 people in his realm during his almost 4-decade-long reign over England, and many of these included his closest friends and courtiers. Men such as Sir Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell had great influence at court, but disagreeing with the king led to their demise at the sharp blade of the axe. There was one woman who was on the periphery of Henry VIII's court, and whose conduct shocked the royals. Agnes Hungerford has been remembered in history as Lady Hungerford, a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, and this even included murder. She met her end brutally at Tyburn. Little is known about Agnes Hungerford's early life, but for certain she married John Cattle during the summer of 1518. Her husband was a steward of Sir Edward Hungerford, a man who was very well respected within the court of Henry VIII. Edward Hungerford was the heir of Sir Walter Hungerford of Farley, and he accompanied his father in battle a number of times, serving in the English army in France in 1513. He was later knighted, and was even present with Henry VIII at the huge spectacle of the Field of the Cloth of Gold, when the English and the French kings met each other. In the summer of their marriage, Agnes and John were staying in the household of Edward Hungerford, who was a prominent landowner in Wiltshire. However, on the 26th of July 1518, John died shortly after his marriage to Agnes, and then after her husband's death, Agnes then married Sir Edward Hungerford, who was also a widower. It's not known for certain how soon after the second marriage took place, but it shocked many with its haste. Agnes Hungerford established her household with her husband, and they lived at the Hungerford family home of Farley Castle, along with a number of servants. It's believed that the pair had adulterous affairs whilst Agnes was married to John, but both Agnes and Hungerford's marriage produced no children. Agnes acted as stepmother to Edward's other children, and they seemed happy enough. But on the 24th of January 1552, Sir Edward Hungerford died, and in accordance to his will, Agnes received everything, acting as the sole executor and sole beneficiary. Edward gave all of his goods, jewels, plate and riches to Agnes, and disinherited his own son along the way. However, soon suspicion arose about Agnes, and it was alleged that her first husband had not died from natural causes. It was said that John had been strangled to death with a neckerchief by a couple of men who worked at Farley Castle. The person who sent these men to kill her first husband was Agnes Hungerford, in the hope that she and her to-be second husband could marry and live. After John had been killed and the life was strangled from him, he was then burned inside of the furnace in the kitchen of Farley Castle to dispose of his remains. The suspicion that arose attracted a significant amount of criticism from those at court, and along with her two servants, Agnes was accused of murder and was indicted on the 25th of August 1522. It's believed that her second husband was probably involved in the murder of her first, and that whilst he was alive she was protected from arrest because of his position at Henry VIII's court. Agnes Hungerford was taken to the Tower of London and indicted of murder, and along with her servants she was found guilty of killing her first husband. After a short trial, she was then taken to Tyburn for her execution. Tyburn was an infamous site of execution where a huge triangular-shaped gallows stood named the Tyburn Tree. It was here where hundreds of criminals were executed during the medieval and Tudor period, and on days where there were executions, huge crowds would flock to watch the grisly proceedings. It was here where some of the most brutal punishments such as hangings, drawings and quarterings were carried out. Agnes was taken to Tyburn from the Tower of London, and because of her crimes, she was sentenced to be hanged. As a woman, it's likely that she was spared beheading, and she would have made the journey to the Tyburn crossing London, where the crowds would have jeered and thrown things at her. She was taken to the gallows, and was then hanged in front of a huge crowd, along with her servants who were indicted alongside her. She was walked up to the scaffold where the gallows stood, and then handed over to the executioner, who secured a noose around her neck. She was then propped up before the gallows, and then the stool was removed and she was left hanging. It took not long for her to die, as the crowds would have looked on. It's believed that Agnes most likely organised the death of her first husband, so that she could freely marry her second, the much wealthier and more high-status Edward Hungerford, a respected knight and member of Henry VIII's court. But following the death of her second husband, she was not given any protection from the law. Following her death, all of her property and lands were forfeited to the crown, with Henry VIII receiving her wealth. However, soon these lands were restored to Agnes's stepson, the rightful person who should have received the land. Interestingly, inside Farleigh Hungerford Castle, the former residence of Agnes, it's said that her ghost still haunts the corridors and rooms. Her spirit is said to return to the place of the murder and disposal of her husband's body, and near to the chapel a beautiful white figure has been seen by witnesses. It's said a ghostly woman appears near to the chapel before fading into darkness. The execution of Agnes Hungerford was one that saw the partner of a prominent member of Henry VIII's court meet her death. Although not the most shocking execution of the Tudor period, it shows the desire Agnes had to strive for a better life for herself, and how she would even murder to secure this. It's unknown what her marriage was like with Edward Hungerford, but it's likely that suspicion about her was rife at court during her husband's final years. The protection offered by her husband in the eyes of the law and the king was feeble once he had died, and Agnes Hungerford is remembered today as an adulterous murderer who brought scandal to the court of one of history's most notorious kings. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.